Hey everyone, this is Kathy from K.dill Handmade, and I wanted to welcome you to the video tutorial for the Moon River. So let's go ahead and get started with the pieces that we're going to need to make this, and then we'll jump right into it. This pattern does not have many pieces at all, which is kind of awesome if you ask me. It's such a quick, neat sew. I think you're really going to like it. So we're going to have two exterior pieces here. I'm using a Luxe vinyl, and it has sort of a almost like a suede-like finish, and this vinyl is from Mormino. So you're going to have two of those. Now I will say, if you are using non-directional print, you can skip cutting two of these and then just cut one using the lining pattern piece, and it would be the same effect. So it's up to you if you wanted to cut the two exteriors or use your lining piece to cut one main exterior. And the same holds true if you're using directional fabric for the lining. Instead of using the lining pattern piece, you can use the outer piece, cut two, and sew them together on the bottom so that your fabric will be right sides up when you look inside your bag. Okay, so we'll need two of those. Then you will also need two side pieces. My vinyl's a little bit curly. I'll try to flatten it out here. So you have two side pieces. Then you're going to have two pieces that are going to be your D-ring tabs. You will also have your zipper overlay if you are adding the optional zipper on the inside of the bag. And that needs to be cut out of non-woven fabric. You will have your zipper, your main zipper for the exterior, and then if you are adding the lining pocket, you will have a zipper for that. You will also need one zipper pull for your lining pocket, two zipper pulls for your main exterior zipper. You will have two D-rings. There's also an exterior base piece. This is an accent piece. So again, I'm using vinyl for this one. If you, so this vinyl is non-fraying, so we're going to just be using it like this. If you don't have it, or if you wanted to use a cotton woven or something that would fray, just cut it maybe about a 1/2 inch wider so that you can fold it under by 1/4 inch along each of these long sides and sew it down, and then that would still be the same size, the same effect. You could just do that with a woven fabric. So that's an option. There is a piece of K.dill Heavy. You can use K.dill Heavy or Peltex or some other stiff, firm stabilizer. That's going to be for the base. And then for your interior, this is your lining piece. This is the one I was talking about. If you don't have non-directional fabric, you can just cut this piece for your exterior. And then that would be all you would need to do for that. You also have two, just like with your two side pieces, you have the exterior and the lining, and then optional zipper pocket if you're adding the zipper pocket. For the lining, I am using waterproof canvas. So that's it. Other items you will need, I would suggest some double-sided tape or glue. You could also use glue, and then of course some clips. Okay, you will also need some sort of binding, and that is going to be for the inside of the bag. This here it's pretty thin. It is fold over waterproof, I believe it's waterproof canvas, but it's from Underground Fabrics. So I'm going to be using this binding for this bag. I would recommend something that is non-fraying. If you're using cotton of some sort, you could always apply a little bit of fray check to the ends of your fabric so it doesn't fray. This is 1 inch wide here, 1 inch wide binding. So I will talk a little bit more about the binding and go over some tips on that when we get to that part in the video. Okay, one side note I did want to show you on when you're creating the bag. This is one that I made with vinyl, and I used webbing, seatbelt webbing for the strap. So what I did here was, instead of cutting the pieces for the D-ring tabs, I just cut a piece of strap webbing here, and then I used it obviously for my strap. So if you are making a strap for this, you will need also 2 lobster clasps. You will need the adjuster bar, and then rivets, or you can always sew that, you know, sew a square here or secure with rivets. So however you would want to secure your strap ends, you'll need that as well. So that's if you are using strap webbing. I am not going to be using strap webbing for this particular bag. I will show you that I'm going to be using this acrylic chain, this acrylic strap chain. I think it's so pretty. And so it's already got the clips on it, and then it's just going to be a little handbag. And so that is up to you also. If you wanted to make it a longer crossbody, you could do it where you make your own strap, and I have instructions in the pattern for how you do that. You can make it as a crossbody, or if you wanted to use a chain, or like this one is an acrylic chain, you could always do that and kind of jazz it up a little bit. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with putting our exterior together. All right, taking our 2 main outer pieces, that's A, we are going to lay them down right sides together, lining up this short edge here, and we're just going to clip them in place straight across the bottom. Okay, and then we're going to take it to the sewing machine, and we're going to stitch down this edge according to the seam allowance. Okay, once we get this stitched down, this edge here, what we want to do is open it up, and we are going to butterfly this seam open. So you can use double-sided tape here if you want to help hold it open, and I think that's what I'm going to do here. So just removing the paper backing, and then I'm going to press it open. All right, there we go. Just give that a nice press to hold it. Now we're going to take our piece of heavy stabilizer. So this is Decoville Heavy, and you can use glue here, some sort of fabric glue, or just a strip of double-sided tape. Really all we want to do is just put it on and have it hold the Decoville or the whatever stabilizer you're using. We just want it to hold it in place until we can sew it down. So now what I will do is, with this center line, I will center the Decoville over this line, and I want the same amount of gap on both sides. So I'm centering it this way, and then I'm centering it over this center line. Okay, now we're going to flip it over. We're going to take it back to the machine, and we're going to top stitch along each side. And that is just to help, is going to stitch on the stabilizers to hold that in place. If you are using a single piece here, what you will just do is fold it in half, make a little notch to find the center so that you can center this over that. And then you would just stitch wherever your center notch is, just stitch on either side. It really doesn't have to be perfect right here because this is going to be covered by the base. So basically you just want to stitch this in place. So just go ahead and stitch down both sides, and then we'll be ready to attach the base. Okay, once this is stitched on, you can see it's stitched on both sides of that line, and then it catches the Decoville on the back, securing that to the base. So now we are ready to take our base accent piece, and we're going to again center it right over that center line. So if it's easier, you can make a little notch, draw a line, or just fold. And then you're going to take that center mark and line it right up with that seam so that is right in the middle. Add a couple clips. Same on this side. You're going to do that. And then I will say just a couple tips here. This is totally up to you. If you wanted to add a little bit of fabric glue or something to the back to help hold this in place until you stitch it, you can. You could also add some double-sided tape. Depending on if your foot, depending on the tension, sometimes it can push the vinyl and then you'll end up with a little bit of a wrinkly bottom. Nobody likes a wrinkly bottom, right? So you can do that to help hold it in place. And then once you do, we are going to stitch at about 1/8 of an inch down each long edge. Now it's optional. You can add a second row stitching on each side just for decoration, for looks, if you wanted to. But that is the next step. We are just going to stitch down each long side. Okay. The base is stitched on. I decided to go with 2 rows of stitching on each side. So now that is done. Our exterior is done. Now optionally, if you wanted to add a logo badge, you could add it, I would recommend adding it 1 inch up, depending on the size of your logo, about 1 inch up from the edge of this base piece here. So let me grab one of my logo badges and I'll show you what I mean. All right, so I have a couple different label options here. I have this cork label that I got from Heartwood and Hide. And what I would do is I would just center it here, you know, about where the center of your bag is. And I would do that 1 inch up from this line here. Same if I have a metal tag, I would put that in the same spot and I would just center it, the bottom of that up from that 1 inch spot. Optionally, I probably won't be using either of these on my bag today because I have this little woven label with my name on it, and I'm going to stick that under the zipper overlay for the inside pocket. So I'm going to put that on the inside of my bag. So again, labels are totally up to you, but if that's where you wanted to, if you wanted to add one, that's where I would suggest adding it at the bottom part here. All right, so to work on our lining, if you are not adding the optional zipper pocket, you can skip this part and skip ahead to the part where we attach the lining to the exterior, and I will timestamp that in the description of the video so you know exactly where to go. If you are adding the optional zipper pocket, you're going to need your lining piece, and you're going to need your zipper overlay, and then we are going to just put some double-sided tape on the back of our zipper overlay. Like that. Okay, and then removing the paper backing, we are going to take it and attach it. There is a measurement for how far down in the pattern, so I'm going to do this off camera. We are going to measure down and attach it, and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, so that is measured how far down we want it to go. I put double-sided tape and attached it here. Now I also mentioned that I was going to be making or using this, so I'm going to slide my little woven label just underside, just on the underside of my zipper overlay. And I want to make sure that it's in far enough so when I stitch around this line, here, let me line this up a little bit better. When I stitch around the line, or stitch around the zipper overlay, it will catch the top of this label in that sewing. Okay, so just like that. Now what we want to do is we're going to stitch a box all the way around the outside of the zipper overlay only. So just around the outside of the overlay. Okay, that is stitched around the outside only. The inside is left unsewn. I've caught my little label, so that's perfect. Now what we want to do is we want to cut out the fabric from the inside here. So I will use my rotary cutter and just cut a line down the middle just to make that slit. And then I'm going to use my scissors and cut away the fabric on the back side, being careful not to cut my overlay. And I'm just going to snip the fabric away, making sure that it's back enough so it doesn't show from the zipper overlay on the front side. So I usually go slow and then keep double checking to make sure I'm not accidentally catching my zipper overlay, because you don't want to cut your zipper overlay at the same time. That would be tragic and very sad, because if that were to happen, you would have to take it all apart, cut out all new pieces, and start again. So just go slow, cutting away the fabric from the back of the zipper overlay. So you end up with something like this, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be straight. You just want to make sure that it's far enough away so that when you flip it over, you don't see it at all. Okay, so this is going to be our zipper opening. Now, using our zipper pocket piece, we are going to take our shorter zipper, and we're going to put the zipper pull on in a second, but I'm going to do this way because it's a little bit easier to stitch it on flat when we don't have the zipper in the way. So I'm just going to clip this on. So my zipper pocket piece is right side up, and then my zipper is right side up, just like this. So that's the back side. Right side up, right side up. We're going to stitch straight across at probably about 1/8. We really just need to baste it on, so, and we want to keep it out of the seam allowance, so about 1/8 of an inch across there. Okay, once that is stitched on, now we're going to take it, flip it over, and we're again going to keep it right side up, right side up. We're going to align the other side of the zipper with the other end of the zipper pocket. So again, clipping in place. Okay, so it's going to look like this. That's the right side of your pocket there, and your zipper is right side up. So now we're going to stitch straight across that end. Okay, now that both sides are stitched on, this is what we have here, this little tube with, this is the right side here, this is the wrong side, and then our zipper is like that. Okay, so we need to attach our zipper pull now. So you can attach it, if you can attach it this way, or if you use a zipper jig, whichever way works best for you. I will try this way. Usually I have to adjust it a couple times to get it to line up just right. There we go. And then you're just going to pull your zipper pull to the center. All right, now thinking about which way you want your zipper to open and close. Do you want it to open and close from the left or from the right? This way, I have the flat edge here, so that means it's opening and closing from the left. That's the way I prefer my zippers to open in my pockets. So I'm going to lay mine down this way. If you can, you want to press, and it's a little bit trickier when you're using waterproof canvas because it's a little stiffer, but you want your zipper laying right side up. And we're going to attach double-sided tape along each edge of the zipper tape. And this is where, if you're using cotton for this, cotton woven for your zipper panel or your zipper pocket, I would suggest probably trying to iron this to help it lay a little flatter. That will make it attaching it to the zipper panel the zipper overlay, that will just make that a little bit easier. I'm just going to try to finger press mine here. All right, so now what we want to do is removing the paper backing from the zipper. We want to center this over your zipper pocket. So what I will do is usually I just kind of fold it back like this and eyeball it to see where it is about center, and then try to push it down on top like this, get the zipper pull out of the way. That top side can be a little tricky, like I said. And you can push it down, push the pocket down, and then sometimes that helps to attach this top part. So you just want to get that zipper centered in that zipper opening. So my zipper double-sided tape is wanting to stick here. Okay, so once you get that centered, what we're going to do is you want to make sure your pocket is facing up so it is not in the way here. Once you get that centered, we're going to stitch on the bottom only, this side to this side. So I'm going to make sure that my zipper is centered before I take it over to the sewing machine because it's coming loose here. So I will fix that. But we are just going to stitch from here to here, starting and stopping at each end, or you could leave long tails and then pull them through to the back side and tie them off. But we just want to stitch this bottom edge for our first step here. Okay, once that is stitched on, now what we want to do is we're going to lay it down and we're going to flip our pocket down towards the inside of the bag. So giving it a nice press, you want to make sure that everything is pulled and laying nice and flat. And then we're going to take it over to the machine. So our pocket is down. The reason why we didn't sew it down when we sewed this line is because if we did, we would have sewn through both layers and sewn the pocket closed. So that's why we keep the pocket up when we sew the bottom line, and then we flip the pocket down. And now we're going to finish off the box. So up the short edge, across this other long edge, and down here to meet this, finishing it off with either back stitching or pulling the strings through, the long tails through to the back side and tying it off. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that, and then we will be just about done with the lining. Okay, so there we are, stitched on the whole rest of the way. I left long tails here so that I could show you how to pull those through in case you haven't seen that done before. So once you have it stitched on, you wanted to make sure you have long tails on the top and on the bottom. And I'm going to zoom in a bit here so you can see. Now on this side, what you want to do is you just want to pull this back string a little bit. And if you can see, there's a little loop that popped up right there. You want to carefully pull that through to the back side. There we go. Then once you get that pulled through, you're just going to tie a knot. Usually I tie about 3 knots. Maybe 4 on this one. There we go. Trim off the extra string. Same on this side, you're going to pull this string. It gives you a little loop right there. Grab that. You can use a pin. You can use a stiletto, something that you can gently pull that string through and not break it. So I would not recommend using a seam ripper. Even though it has a small pointy end, that would be really easy for grabbing that. I have used a seam ripper, and sometimes if I can't find other stuff to use instead, if it's laying near, I will use it, but the risk there is that you end up cutting your string, so you don't want to do that. All right, so there you can see tied off on both sides. And then here, a nice close-up of the front. And then by doing that, you can see you can't really tell where the stitching starts and stops. So that's just a neat feature if you like to do that for your zipper pocket. Okay, so now that this is attached, our last step here is we need to close up the sides. So just pulling the side back, we're going to stitch straight down this edge according to what is in the pattern instructions. Same thing, we're going to flip it back on this side and stitch down, closing up this side. And then once we get that done, our pocket is done, our lining is done, and we're ready to attach it to the exterior. Okay, so now we are ready to attach the lining. So grabbing our longer zipper, move my ruler out of the way. Okay, grabbing your longer zipper, what we need to do is we're going to attach 1/2 to each side of this exterior. So you're going to take your zipper and just separate it right in half. If you haven't done this before, don't worry, it's okay. Don't be scared, it'll be all right. I'll show you how we're going to do this. What we want to do is we want to take our zipper teeth and flip it over so they are teeth side down, and then we are going to line it up here with the top of this raw edge here of our panel. So I'm going to use some double-sided tape. It's up to you, you don't have to use double-sided tape. You can use just clips or whatever method you prefer for attaching a zipper, whichever method works best for you. Personally, I like using double-sided tape because I feel like it holds it really well, and then there's less chance of it slipping as I am sewing it on. Okay, so now we're going to attach the lining. So we're going to add another piece of tape here. Okay, so now we are going to take the double-sided tape, the paper backing off of the double-sided tape, and grabbing your lining piece, we are going to flip it over and attach it to the exterior. Now, one thing to keep in mind is if you have a logo or if you have one side that is the front of your bag versus the back, think about which way you want your lining to be. So if you put it, if this is the front and you put this down, this will be against the front of your bag. If you want it to be on the back side of your bag, just flip it over so that it will be attached this way. This one, since I don't really have a front or back, I'm just going to attach mine this way. So I'm just lining up that top edge, pressing it in place. Okay, now that is holding. I don't need to add clips, although I can if I wanted to, but the double-sided tape should hold it well enough until I get to the sewing machine to stitch it on. Now what we need to do is the exact same thing on the other side. So adding the double-sided tape, then we are going to attach the other half of our zipper tape and then the other half of the lining. So again, flip your zipper teeth over so the teeth side are down. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to take the other half of my lining and I'm going to line it up with that top raw edge of the zipper tape. Okay. All right, so now that that is attached, what we want to do is we want to stitch down each side. Okay, once that is stitched down both sides, your lining and your exterior is attached. So we want to flip it through so that the panels are now wrong sides together, right sides out. And what we're going to do here is we're going to pull it taut, and then we're going to top stitch along the zipper edge. So pulling your lining away and your exterior, I'll add a couple clips here to the side and then maybe just down here to help hold it. Same on this side. A couple clips. Okay, and then same pulling it over on this side. We want to pull that out as much as possible. Keep it nice and flat. And then pulling it out all the way at the other side. Okay, clip there. And you don't have to clip it on the side. I just like to clip it on the side because I think it helps to hold it all kind of down and out of the way. So I will just flip it over, double check to make sure that everything looks good. And now what we're going to do is we're going to top stitch down each long side. Okay, once that is top stitched along both sides, we can set this to the side for just a moment because we need to work on our side D-rings. So you're going to need your 2 D-rings for that, and then your 2 tab pieces. So if you are using strap webbing, obviously you don't have to do this part because your webbing will already be to length, and then what you would want to do is you just want to slide it over your D-ring and then base stitch here at the bottom. But since I am making my own D-ring tabs, we are going to be using these pieces here. Okay, and then flipping over to the back side, you can see I've already drawn a line on each piece. What we want to do is take some double-sided tape. We're going to fold each long end into the center, and that is going to make our D-ring tab. So once we fold it in, it will be the correct measurement that we need it to be. So removing the paper backing, we're going to fold that in right to that drawn line, and then same on the other side. Okay, just like that. Repeating for the other tab. Okay, once you get those folded to the center, we're now going to take it to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch down each long end. Now again, here you have the option if you wanted to do a single row of stitching, or if you added a second row of stitching on the base, you could do a second row of stitching on these as well. Totally up to you. We just need to stitch down each long side. Okay, once you have those top stitched, now we just need to attach the D-ring. So I'm just going to slide the D-ring on, fold it in half. I'm going to add a clip. You can hold or use the clip to hold it in place, or you can base stitch along this bottom raw edge. It's up to you. Okay, now we are ready to attach our D-rings to our exterior. All right, so with your exterior, now what we need to do is attach the zipper pulls for this piece. So we want to flip it over so that it is lining side up. Our zipper pull is going to be hanging down, so hanging down this way. And we're just going to attach one at this end, and then we're going to attach one at the other end. go. Sometimes it takes a couple tries to get it just right. All right, so what we have now is a little tube that looks something like this. Okay. So these are going to be our sides where our tabs will be attached. So taking one of your D-ring tabs, you're going to line it up centered over the zipper tape. Okay, and then you want it to overhang by about, let's say that's probably about 1/2 inch, and clip it in place. Okay, and then we're going to baste stitch straight across here. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. So taking your D-ring tab, centering it right on top of the zipper, overhang about 1/2 inch, clip in place. All right, and let's take this to the machine, and we are going to baste stitch across each zipper tab end. Okay, each side is basted on here, so everything is looking good. Now I will say, if you are using a domestic machine, I probably would recommend, this is pretty thin vinyl, so you might be okay. If you're using thicker vinyl, or your machine just can't handle it, I would recommend moving to either the strap webbing or using a cotton woven to create your D-ring tabs, because this is the part that does get a little bulky and a little thick. So if your machine struggles at all, I recommend really trying to keep any kind of interfacing out of the seam allowance. You can even cut it down by 1/2 inch to make sure that it's well out of the seam allowance to make your stitching here easier. But that's just one area where it could get a little bulky, so those are just some tips that I recommend there. Okay, so now we are ready to attach our side tabs. So you have 2 exterior, 2 interior. We're going to take one of the exteriors and line it up right sides down. So as you can see, this matches pretty exactly. Sideways, it's a little bit wider. So you just want to make sure it's the shorter side that you are lining it up with. Okay, so your fabric is right side together with the exterior. We're going to flip it over, take our lining piece, and lay that right on top. Again, making sure it's going the right way. We're going to clip it in place. Okay, so that's how it's looking. We have lining right side together with lining, exterior right side together with exterior. I'm just going to slide this inside here. And then we're going to take it to the machine and baste stitch, not baste stitch, just regular stitch straight across according to the seam allowance. And we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. Okay, now that that is baste stitched on, or just stitched on, not baste stitched, I don't know why I keep saying baste stitched. It's stitched together. We are going to flip this back and flip the lining back so that they are now wrong sides together. I'm going to add a little clip here just to help hold it in place. And then I'm going to top stitch right along this folded edge. Okay, so once that is top stitched, I'm going to do the exact same thing to the other side. Okay, so now that that is all stitched on, we are ready to put this together. All right, so what we want to do now is we want to flip it over to the back side. And let me zoom in a little bit here. We're going to make a mark, so grabbing a ruler and a pen. Don't worry that this is a little bit longer. You want to just make a mark that is 1/4 of an inch in from each side, and you could even do it 1/4 of an inch up to help when we sew that side as well. Okay, so you have 1/4 inch little boxes in each corner. We're going to do the same thing to this side. Okay, so that is going to be, let me zoom back out here. That is going to be our guide for when we stitch this to this, since we got to stitch this all together now. Okay, so what you want to do, I'm going to line this up as much as I can, fold it in half. Okay, and you can make a little mark. I'm going to make a tiny little notch. Okay, so there's my little V shape notched out right there. I'm going to take this notch and I'm going to grab it, center it with that center seam that we stitched early on. So centering it right over that. Now I'm going to add some clips, clip it in place, straight across. Okay, so that is your stitch guide. So you're going to start in 1/4 of an inch. So where that line is, you're going to stitch all the way across, stopping at that 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so stitch to stitch. If it's easier, you could also cut out these little boxes. It's so small that I just leave it, but you definitely could cut out those little boxes, and then that would help you to know exactly where to start and stop when you're sewing that together. And we're going to do the same thing to the other side. So finding the center, tiny notch, lining it up with the bottom of the bag, right where that center seam was. Clipping it in place. And the same here, we are going to start, so if this is at your machine like this, we're going to start where this line is and stop where this line is. And we're going to sew that on according to the seam allowance. I'm going to take you over to the sewing machine with me so we can do this final part together, because it can be a little tricky. All right, so stitching this on, we're just going to push this part out of the way and get this under our needle. We're starting right where that line is. So I'm just going to put my needle down to help hold it together, hold it in place. And we're going to stitch across to this line. Okay, so as you can see, starting and stopping right at those lines, then we're going to do the same thing to the other side. So pushing this out of the way. Okay, so both of those are stitched on. Now we are ready to attach the sides. Okay, once you have both sides, or both bottoms I should say, stitched on, now what we need to do is we need to align these side seams. So I just put my fingers in there almost like as if I was doing a boxed corner. And first thing you want to line up is this top corner here. I'm going to add a couple clips down to this bottom edge, and I just kind of just push it down so that it kind of, I don't know if you can see, it's right in that corner. So that little box corner right there that we drew, we are going to now be stitching down into that corner. So meeting up with this other line that we stitched, stopping right at where that corner is, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. So we're just going to stitch straight down that side. And then same thing for this side, lining up the top corner first. Starting and stopping right there where it should meet that other stitch line or that corner of that box. So you're going to do that for all 4 sides. You're going to stitch down each side, meeting right there at that center mark or at that stitch line where your little box corner was. So to stitch down these sides, this is where it gets a little tricky because we're working into the corner. So what I will do is I will just fold this down so it kind of gives me a flat edge to sew to. So starting here at the top corner, according to the seam allowance, I'm just going to stitch straight down this line, and you can see how I have this kind of folded back, and that flattens out this corner. Okay. I will trim all these seams up once I get all of the corners sewn. But now for this side, what I will do is I will fold, it's almost like you want to fold this in half, and that flattens out that corner right there. And then that gives you a little bit easier time Okay, so there's that side. Now we're going to do the same thing to this side. So kind of folding that down on itself like that. I'm kind of folding it right there on an angle. Okay, same for the last side, again folding this way. And when you're stitching into these corners, you want to make sure that you go all the way to the top edge. So all the way, almost like off the edge. And that's going to help give you that nice crisp corner there. So, alright, let me trim this up and then we'll go over back to the cutting table. I'll trim these and then I'll show you how we put the binding on, and we are just about finished. Okay, so here's how our bag is looking with all of the sides sewn on, or sewn together I should say. I'm just going to trim it a little bit to kind of even things up. You don't really have to trim the seam allowance down, but I do like it to be straight. So if any of my seams are a little bit off, I will trim it just a bit. That one looks pretty good on that side. I might trim it just a teeny bit. Okay, same for this side. Just a little bit here. Okay, so now we are ready to attach the binding. Now this part is probably the trickiest part of the whole bag. But the good news is it's on the inside of your bag, and no one's going to see it unless they turn your bag inside out or get inside your bag with a magnifying glass. So you shouldn't be too stressed out if this doesn't end up perfect, but I'm going to try to give some tips to help it be as perfect as possible. Or as good enough as possible, right? We don't have to be perfect. Okay, so starting with one side, what I'm doing is I'm taking my binding and I'm going to basically just fold it over this raw edge. Okay, so now how I do this, because this is waterproof canvas and it is pretty much non-fraying. The sides are singed a bit. I don't know how it's made, but it feels like they're singed. I'm sure it's not singed, but that's what it feels like. So they're not going to fray on the sides here. The only part where they might fray is where you cut, and that really is only going to happen in these top corners. And once you turn this through, this is pushed into that top corner of your bag, and it's not really going to get any kind of wear and tear or anything rubbing against it or anything like that. So me personally, I feel comfortable with just trimming it at the end and leaving it like a raw edge right there, because it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be pushed on the inside and kind of protected. If that bothers you, you could always fold your end in and then fold it over and just start right there at that corner piece. So you can see it's a little bit, it doesn't go all the way to the top. There's a little bit opening right there, but you could just start that way and then you don't have that raw edge at the top. This would be true if you're using a cotton material for your binding. You could do it this way as well. Okay, so like I said, I am not too worried about it. So I'm just going to start clipping my binding on. So now I like to do it with bag side up. I just always do it in this way. And I feel it kind of from both sides to make sure that it is covering about equal parts on both sides of the bag. Okay, so here is the tricky part. Here's where we come to the corners. Now miter corners are a little tricky, but what I will do is with my binding, I will sort of just wrap it around this bottom half. So you see how that kind of folds up like that? Then I will take that and just fold it down. Now you can wiggle it, adjust it, finesse it so you can get that perfect corner just like that. Clip it in place. Here, I'm going to add a clip to this side and add a clip to this side just to try and help hold that right there. But that is really, like, I think if you've done quilt binding and you're doing, you know, you're familiar with that, it's kind of that same kind of idea for that corner. So you just want to, I have it again, just wrapped around the bottom like this. And then on this side, I just fold that to make that corner. And then if I need to adjust it, I will. But again, like I was saying earlier, it's on the inside of your bag and it doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, that's my motto anyways, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't try, but it does not have to be perfect. And don't beat yourself up if it's not perfect, because why? Why do that? Sewing is supposed to be fun. So let's not beat ourselves up if something is not perfect. Okay, so I'm just doing the same thing to the other side. Again, okay, wrapping this around the bottom, and then I have that corner there on this side, and I just fold it right over. Okay, again, wrapping it around. Got that angle, folding it down to make that corner. Okay, I know they also have, I believe there's a couple companies that have peel and stick binding that you could always use. If that helps, that might just help it to hold in place before you can stitch it. That is an option as well. I'm just gonna trim my little string here. Okay, now we need to take it to the sewing machine and we are going to sew our binding on. All right, so just like I did when I was sewing the sides, now we're going to sew the binding on. And this honestly is the trickiest part of the whole bag. I'm going to show two different ways. One way to sew on the binding on this side and a different way on this side. Depending on your machine's ability, one of these might work a little bit easier for you. So it's just options for you to try. So now what we want to do is we want to try and get this as flat as possible. So just like when we were sewing the sides together, I'm going to kind of push this so I can fold this down and make it flat. And I'm going to start at the top. And I'm just going to sew down to the edge or to the bottom corner. Okay, so now let's see, I think I'm going to do one more stitch. Actually, back up a little bit. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to leave the needle down. Now this is where you kind of need to like manhandle your bag, push it around. Because what we want to do is we want to turn the base and be able to stitch across to the other side. So here, as you can see, I have this again folded back this way, so that kind of makes this as flat as possible. And I'm going to stitch now to the other corner. Okay. And then the last edge, again pushing the bag around, we want to lift up that foot and try to push the bag underneath. And then stitch up to this edge. Okay, so that is one side. That is one way to do it. And as you can see, my corners are not perfect. And that's okay. I'm not stressing about that. I'm not worried about that. If it bothers you, you could take your scissors and just trim this up. But again, no one's gonna see that. It's on the inside of your bag and everything. It's fine. It's fine, guys. It's fine. Okay, so that's one way to do it, where you just do it in one continuous piece. I'm going to show you this way if you have a machine that maybe isn't as strong and it's hard to get in there and get that bag to turn under the needle. We'll show you another way that I've done this, and that seems to work as well. So starting and stopping at the top. Okay, again, we're going to sew down to the corner. And just add a few start and stop stitches here. We're going to pull it out from under the machine, trim the threads. Okay, and now we're going to just kind of flatten the bag out this way. And we're going to insert it again under the foot. So lining up right where our stitch was on that side. Do a couple start and stop stitches. Stitching across to this corner now. Okay, again pulling it out, trimming my strings as I go. I'll have to do a little more trimming, but okay. And now we're going to take it and we're going to turn it, push it this way so that our bag flattens out this way. I'm going to insert the needle again, or insert the bag under the needle. start and stop, stitching that final edge. Okay, so that gives you an idea of what that one looks like. Maybe it looks a little bit neater. It's a little bit easier to see than keeping the needle down the whole way. And like I said, it doesn't matter that you start and stop in these corners because it's on the inside of the bag. I know I've said it a million times, but really guys, it's okay, it doesn't matter. And everything is held on nice and neat. Okay, so now let's go back over to the cutting table and I'll show you the final steps. Okay, now that our binding is all sewn on, what I will do is I will just trim it off according to the angle at the top of the bag. So I just follow that curve of the bag right in that corner. And like I said, this doesn't bother me at all. I've never had a problem with it fraying or getting too, you know, dog-eared or whatever, having stuff kind of unravel on me. What I'm going to do is just a couple quick little thread singes right at these top corners. And if you're using cotton woven, or even with this, if you feel like it will help, you can always put some fray check on the top here, and that you shouldn't have a problem then. Okay, so now we're going to open the zippers up and turn it through. Okay, and just to show you what I mean about that corner, I don't know if you can see it in there, but it is like really, like it is tucked in there. It is right there. So unless someone, I mean, unless you're packing this baby full, I don't think anything's really going to get up there to bother it. So you just want to push your corners out nice. There we go. Everything is laying perfectly, I think. The pocket is on this side. I'm just going to flatten this out. There we go. That side's a little bit thicker because of that pocket. All right. So closing it up. Of course, you can shape it. What I will do a lot of times, if the air can't get in there, is I will put this against the heat. So maybe I will use my iron on my ironing board and then kind of lay this against the heat. Put some of those air pockets that you get in shipping things, stuff that inside while it's still warm. Close this up and then let it sit there and kind of cool and form to the shape, so I don't have any lumpy, bumpy parts or anything like that. Okay, so I do see a little string here that I want to trim off. All right, there is our bag, guys. I think it looks so cute. I just love this bag. Again, the pattern comes with, there's our zipper pocket on the inside. The pattern comes with applique shapes, so you can really have some fun. There's also a clear and jelly version, which I think is just adorable and super useful. Now the last thing is to attach your strap. So depending on which strap you have, which option you made, let me get this stuff out of the way. There we go. There is this clear acrylic strap with this bag. I think it is just adorable. I really do. I really think it's so fun with this clear acrylic, and it brings out the colors in the bag really well. I think it's just like the cutest little like fancy evening, you know, party bag, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, guys, thank you so much for joining me for this video tutorial. Thank you for supporting my patterns and supporting me as a designer. And I've become friends with a lot of you guys, and it really means the world to me. So I just wanted to say thank you again. And I hope you have fun sewing. So something that makes you smile.